Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I just did an in-depth interview with Bobby Ann Cox, who is an attorney from the state of New York. A year ago, she won a court case against the Department of Health because they created a regulation that I'm going to share with you in just a moment about quarantine and isolation. And the reason why she won this lawsuit is because the health officer and the Department of Health was basically making a law outside of the legislature. And in our form of government, we have a legislative body, which can be your state assembly and senate. It can be your school board. It could be a county council, it could be a city council, but no one individual in our form of government is supposed to have all of the power to create law. I've been fighting that in my own county of Orange in California because it's kind of the opposite, where the legislature gave away its authority to the governor, and all of that is absolutely unconstitutional. What happened is that, and this is important, that the state of New York appealed that decision and said, no, that was a wrong ruling. And we, in fact, as the health department, have the authority to just issue these regulations and create basically laws for quarantine and isolation without the legislative input. So I interviewed Bobby about that. The appeal is pending, and there should be information coming out from that court very shortly, and I will bring you an update on that. Many of you were asking about exactly what that entailed. What were these egregious measurements? I don't even want to call them laws and requirements, or measures and requirements that the county was inflicting upon the population. So I'm going to share that with you. We're going to look at three states: New York, California, and Hawaii. Actually, maybe we'll do Florida as well, because that has been coming on the radar, as many of you have been asking me about that. I'm going to break all that down for you. It is quite disturbing, but we do need to fight back, just like Bobby Ann Cox is. All right, this is a sponsored video, so let me take you right on over to my friends at noblegoldinvestments.com. This is the only gold company that I trust. And if you are feeling unsure about your finances these days, you are not alone. That's why Noble Gold Investments is here to help. Hear it straight from the folks that they've helped, who say the Noble crew walked me through everything, no stress. And with their help, I can finally sleep easy at night. And now this month, Noble Gold Investments is handing out, I want you to take a look at this, handing out free 5-ounce silver America the Beautiful coins. So you'll get one of those if you qualify for your IRA. So invest in gold and silver with Noble Gold Investments. You can call them here. The number is 877-646-5347. They will walk you through it. Of course, there is no guarantee of any kind, and every investment does carry a risk, but you can get all of your questions answered. noblegoldinvestments.com. All right, friends, I want to take you through some of these egregious measures that are being inflicted upon the population in the name of public health. If you are new to my channel, I encourage you to watch my previous videos where I talk about the whole concept of public health, which is quite ludicrous to me. There is public sanitation, there's public safety, but there's only individual health. I am not responsible for anyone else's health, and they are not responsible for mine. I see this concept of public health and public health laws as a massive grab by the government for you, your body, your ability to move, to travel, to work. And I'm going to break that down for you in just one moment. All right, first we are going to hop right on over to a document that came from the state of New York. And this is actually at the heart of the lawsuit that Bobby Ann Cox, the attorney from New York State, is litigating. So the health officer and the health department issued this regulation about quarantine and isolation. And I just pointed out a couple of things here. We have to read between the lies, as I like to say. So first of all, they define a case as a person who has been diagnosed or likely to have a particular disease or condition. Gee, that doesn't sound too verifiable, does it? It sounds as though the state can just determine and guess if somebody has some so-called disease. Then there are some other definitions, but this other one here is isolation of a case of a person means the physical separation and the confinement of an individual or a group of individuals who are infected or reasonably determined by the state commissioner of health or the local health authority to be infected with a highly contagious disease or organism. There is so much controversy over this and over the whole concept of how people get sick and the theory of contagion. And I will just leave it at that. That's probably as far as I can push it on this channel. I highly recommend that you do your research. There are excellent books out there about the theory of disease and illness, and they are pushing it here in New York and every other state. In fact, every country. They are pushing this theory that you personally are responsible for someone else's health. Well, why isn't their immune system responsible for it, or whatever mechanism their body uses to ward off disease and illness? Why are you responsible for that? That has never made sense to me. So isolation is those individuals that the state has deemed to possibly be infected, and then quarantine is the physical separation and confinement of those who have been exposed to this highly contagious communicable disease, and they do not show signs or symptoms of such a disease. All right, before I continue with that law, let's just talk face to face. Do you see this slippery slope and how dangerous this is? I'm sure that there have been many movies. I don't watch movies, but I've heard that there are many movies about contagious diseases. I think back, actually, I did see a movie a long, long time ago, and it was called The Andromeda Strain. And if it was, I actually don't like movies where I'm scared, but if you wanted to see that, it is about some kind of contagious outbreak and how they go in and just force people from their homes. They drag them out of their homes, and even worst, as I say, worst is worse than worse. So this has been in our popular culture for some time, the idea that you could be suspected of being exposed to a disease, not even having it. This regulation says that you were suspected of being exposed to it. So let's think about this. Let's imagine that you were at a restaurant, just enjoying yourself and having dinner, and you paid with your credit card, and then come to find out that there was an outbreak of a disease at this restaurant, and they tracked you down because they saw that you made a payment. Another good reason why to pay, you should pay with cash. So you made a payment on your credit card, and they're going to come knocking at your door and say, we suspect that you were exposed to this contagious disease. And our authority that they gave themselves is that you, and that's what we're going to look at now. So let me share my screen again. And so if you were exposed to this highly contagious disease, here is what they can do. All right, there's voluntary quarantine, there's home quarantine, but this is what they are stating. All right. The state commissioner of health may issue or may direct the local health authority to issue isolation or quarantine orders to you. So in this case, if you were just exposed, it would be a quarantine order. The quarantine locations may include home quarantine. So I guess the best case scenario would be that you could say, all right, I won't leave the house for 10 days. Do you think that's even remotely constitutional? Doesn't that go against your rights? I am 100% in opposition to all of this. They could put you in other, how do you like that word? Other residential or temporary housing quarantine, or quarantine at such other locations as the public health authority issuing the order deems appropriate. And this is where the idea of the quarantine camps came about, because they would have these locations where they would take you to this location. Now, they're not going to release you until, let's see, here we go. They are going to monitor you to ensure your compliance. They will coordinate with local law. This is in the state of New York. They will coordinate with local law enforcement to make sure that you comply with the order. And here we go. Any person who violates a public health order, such as quarantine or isolation, shall be subject to all civil and criminal penalties as provided for by law. And that is in a different part of this. Usually it is some jail time and a fine, or both. Okay. Then Finally, it says, let me find this last part here for you. Hang on one second. I'm going to cue that up for you. All right, friends, what's interesting here is that I'm going to share my screen again, and I could find nothing in this information from New York about the ending of the quarantine or of the isolation. What I did find is the self-given authority to the health department that they can take any other steps. You see that word any, I don't like that. Any other steps to reduce morbidity and mortality that the local health authority determines to be appropriate. So that could be requiring you to be tested, to be treated, and to become a human pincushion. Again, it is repeated down here that the local health authority shall take any such action that as the state commissioner of health deems appropriate in this investigation of the outbreak. That is very bone chilling to me. This is the regulation that Bobby Ann Cox is fighting for tooth and nail in New York State. Now, it's not the only state that has that. So let me cue up here what I've got for you next. All right, we are going to look at the state of Florida. And we'll hop right on over here. This is from 2023. It is their public health law, public health advisories, public health emergencies, all about isolation and quarantines. Now we'll look at Florida, then we'll look at Hawaii. We'll finish up with California, which is only a paragraph, and it's the most chilling paragraph of all. So here again, they give the definition of isolation. Isolation is with the person who is believed to be infected. How do you like them apples? Only believed, not confirmed, not just believed. Okay, I think that is a little bit weak. And then quarantine, of course, is the separation of an individual reasonably believed to have been exposed to the communicable disease, but who is not yet ill. That is also horrible, because how are you going to defend that if they say, well, you're just not sick yet, but you need to be quarantined? Now, luckily, we still do have due process of law. And ideally, you would have an attorney, you would fight this in court, you would go to a judge and say, I do not consent. Okay, here we go. Let's see what this is. Florida, the state of Florida. And I know many people are living there in freedom. And I will just scroll down to this next part. This is what the health officer has the legal authority. This was passed in their legislature. So unlike New York, where it was just the Department of Health that was issuing this, this actually was passed by the Florida legislature. What in the world? I think that needs to be repealed or at least amended. So here we go. They have the authority to order an individual to be examined, tested. Can you say nasal swab assault, anyone? Treated, we know what that means, treated as a pincushion, isolated or quarantined for communicable diseases that have significant morbidity or mortality and present a severe danger to public health. Why are you responsible for someone else's health? I will never understand this. And if you are unable, at least they have this, or unwilling to be examined, tested, or treated, okay, that would be me, because I would not go along with that. Then for reasons of health or religion or conscience, I would say all of the above, you may be subjected to isolation or quarantine. It does not say for how long. And as I showed you in the New York regulation, it did not even give any information related to when you would be released or how long you would be there. Remember, the testing is very, how can I say this, unreliable. And in the state of New York, all of those tests, in every state, as a matter of fact, when you're tested, all of that is reported to the health department. Even if you have a negative test, your name is on the list. So here we go. This is very chilling. If there is no practical method to isolate or quarantine the individual, the state health officer may use any means necessary to treat the individual. How do you like them apples? Them are pretty rotten apples. Again, this is in the state of Florida. You can read this entire law if you like. I just highlighted some points that I thought really jumped out. The Department of Health has the duty and the authority to declare, enforce, modify, and abolish. Abolish, you know what that means? To eliminate, to exterminate the isolation and quarantine of persons, animals, and premises. Okay, so apparently, I think I misread that. They can abolish, meaning, I think, cancel the isolation and quarantine of the person. So that's what I'm going to interpret that as. Remember, this also applies to animals, and they will destroy your animals. The department shall adopt rules to specify the conditions and procedures for imposing and releasing an isolation or quarantine. Now, I have not seen those rules. I did not see that in this law. So I would be curious to find out how long those isolation and quarantine time periods are. So the rules must include provisions related to the movement of persons or animals who are exposed or infected. Again, restricting your movement and of your animals as well. And it's not just your dog and cat and horse and bird. This can be any farm animals you have, chickens, goats, what have you. They want to go after the food sources as well. So tests or treatment. And again, we know exactly what that means. Well, I don't know why that's happening. And then testing or destruction of animals with or suspected of having a disease transmissible to humans. I would like to know how they prove that. This is very troubling to me. This is in the state of Florida. All right, we're going to look at the state of Hawaii, and then we're going to finish off with the state of California. Of course, Hawaii has been on everyone's radar given the outlandish, illegal activities by Slosh Green Do Deal, as I'm calling him now, because he certainly is sloshing the hogwash. And I've done 50 videos or more about what happened in Maui. So I hope that you will watch that in my Maui Fires playlist. And we'll take a look at the authority that the governor has in an emergency period. These are additional powers. This is related to the quarantine and isolation. So there are other powers that the governor has in terms of, seizing property and making sure that there are no price increases on essential items and that kind of thing. But this is all about what I want to focus on is the public health and the disease. So here again, the governor and through the health department can provide for and require the quarantine or segregation of persons who are affected with or believed to have been exposed. That is so weak. What does that mean? So you were somewhere where people got sick, and they're going to connect the clots and say that you are believed to have been exposed to this. And in the governor's opinion, okay, the governor is not a legislative authority. He does not have that authority to make a law, and certainly not to restrict your movement. I am 100% against this. He, in this law, has the authority to require compulsory immunization programs. All right, I find that very chilling. He can designate you as a public nuisance. Here you have it, as a public nuisance, or your animal, or your place of business. So what you do, here you are, acts, practices, your conduct, right? Your behavior of maybe breathing oxygen and keeping your body pure is going to be deemed a public nuisance. And you as the public nuisance can be summarily abated, right? With their type of restrictions. The property can be destroyed. And I just find this absolutely, completely outside the rule of law. Of course, they have to have the phrases hardships and inequities because they really want everybody to be equally impoverished. And here you go. In Hawaii, the governor has the authority to break the law. There it is. They're calling it suspending, but that's basically not following the law. And basically, they're doing this in every state, but here it is in black and white and apparently yellow as I'm highlighting. This one is quite troubling to me. All right. The governor has the authority to shut off water and gas and electric power. You might argue that that could be for public safety, right? Not necessarily public health related to diseases and so forth. But this is what troubles me, that the governor has the authority to suspend electronic media transmission. So I think this slosh Green New Deal has been dancing on the edges of this, saying that he doesn't care for the social media influencers like yours truly, where people really are getting information. And he has also been saying that misinformation is being spread on social media. So what would prevent him from saying, okay, I'm just going to shut down all internet access like they did in Lahaina, right? People said they didn't have their internet. And of course, mandatory evacuation. You may argue that that is for public health. Public safety makes more sense. You may or may not be in favor of that. And then this is also troubling to me, and this is where he's doing his land grab. The governor has the authority to assure the continuity of service by critical infrastructure facilities, both publicly and privately owned. So the government can take over your private property and regulating, if necessary, to the continuation of the service by taking over. So let's say that you have a restaurant and the government's going to take in and come right in and take it over because they want to provide food for the people. And this law gives him the authority. So those were the main things that I wanted to point out. And here it is. That is 127A-13. I mentioned it in my interview with Bobby Ann Cox about the lawsuit that she's fighting New York State. Let's finish up with the very short one. The California law that I'm going to share with you is only one paragraph long. Hang on. All right, here we go. We're going to finish up by looking at the California law. There are a lot of laws related to the health and safety codes and public health. And I am actually fighting against the County of Orange for their violation of some of these laws. But this is the one I wanted to point out to you. It's one paragraph. It's the most chilling of all. Very succinct. They're not pulling any punches here. So this is California Health and Safety Code. Yes, safety, for your safety. Health and Safety Code 120-140. Upon being informed by a health officer of any contagious, infectious, or communicable disease, yeah, that's never been proven, the department may take measures as are necessary. Well, I would like to argue that word necessary because I'm going to say that they're not necessary, but they may take measures as are necessary to ascertain the nature of the disease and prevent its spread. Are you ready for it? To that end, the department may, if it considers proper, take possession or control of the body of any living person. How in the non-spinning world is this even remotely legal? In the state of California, which people are fleeing in droves, and it makes sense now that we look at this law, that the health department, the government, the health department can take possession of your body, you, and your child's body, and your parents' body. They can take possession or control of the body of any living person. And it goes on to say the corpse of any deceased person. California Health and Safety Code 120-140. How do you like them apples? Them are pretty rotten apples. Now the question is, Peggy, what can we do about it? Number one, you keep an eagle eye on the legislature. Sad to say, in California, it's very slow going in terms of repealing these laws and pushing back against them. I would love to see more courageous attorneys stand up and take these cases. If you are harmed, you have standing. You can take a lawsuit to court and you can say that you have been harmed by this law. That's one thing that you can do. You can look at the bills that are being passed in your own state legislature. And for what it's worth, and There are certain times when it works and certain times it doesn't. We have had success in California repealing some of these more egregious laws. There have been many lawsuits going against the recent ones, such as it's illegal in the state of California for a medical practitioner to give any opinion that is in contrast with what the government says. All right, that's been a long time coming, and they made it into a law that is being fought in court. There is a stay, right? So there is a halt on that law for those that brought that case forward. So there can be some legal challenges. Some people want to move out of states like California and New York, but I just showed you Florida has a similar law. It may be that people have been asleep at the wheel and they didn't realize that these laws are on the books in their state. So I would recommend, if you're in a state that I didn't cover, we looked at New York, Hawaii, California, and Florida. Aside from Hawaii, these are very populous states, California, New York, and Hawaii. So if you live in a state where you are interested in this, do some research on your public health law in your state. And you can do the deep dives, you can do the research, you can email me if you find something that you would like me to share. We need to keep the pressure on. We need to keep exposing this information. We need to fight against it. And if you can share this video, let people know about what is afoot. And then if you want to get active in your state legislature, this is something that you can also do. There are a lot of state level groups where people are fighting that. So you can do an internet search for that and keep the pressure on those public serpents, as I call them. All right, friends, wanted to do a deep dive on those laws since many of you were asking about it. Thank you so much for being on board. Stick with me. I've got some more eye-opening information about Hawaii, California, and everything else that we need to keep our eyes on. See you soon, everybody.